Okay. Cool. All right, let's
Crazy shit is dead. I'm on it. Crazy.
That was really good. Jonathan, do you want to go first? I can't. Is he? Yeah, I think that this is really good. Your arrangement and your phrasing. Are you still muted? Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Yeah, it's coming through. Okay. Okay. All right, great. So yeah, it's coming through. Audio. It's coming through. Audio. There we go. Audio's coming through on my end, so it's fine on this end. Can you hear me okay, Cryo? Okay, that's okay. So apparently he's having difficulty hearing everybody else, but I'm gonna go ahead and go ahead. So Cryo, I think that the arrangement is actually really good. A huge plus is you go from a trap into a dubstep drop, and it's done in a way that's very cohesive. It's very easy to follow along. And so the first aspect in songwriting is the storytelling element, right? And I feel that that's one of the strongest things that I've observed from your track, before even talking about how solid the drops themselves are, right? And so I'm a huge fan. I'm actually a huge fan, because I would suspect that this type of style of music, you've probably been experimenting for, at least music production, I'd probably guess that you've been doing this for at least a couple of years. And generally folks don't have the structure down this well. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it thoroughly. I have over here Jonathan looking at your SoundCloud, and you got a pretty good number of followers in proportion to your following. One of the things that for 10 years, but EDM for 4 or 5, and that shows. One of the things that like really stand out is like some folks pick up EDM like in a year, and then all of a sudden are incredibly proficient at it because they already understand the story structure and the storytelling aspect of it. I gotcha. By the way, guys, if you guys are interested in getting your tracks reviewed by the community, by ourselves, by Cryo, we definitely ask that if you do submit something that you stick around just as a token of goodwill to hear out other folks, maybe get an opportunity to interact with them and maybe even collab if the styles work. Um, but to kind of finish closing that off, Cryo, from my end, I feel that like you have very solid sound selection in the sense that it's unique and it's not generic. Like trap is very easy to come off generic. So is dubstep because it's such an incredibly saturated market, and you have kind of like this. I wouldn't call it an 8-bit, but it's kind of like this digital type of tune to it, and it's very persistent thematically throughout the track, even when you introduce dubstep into it. And that's actually one of the hardest things that I've seen with certain production, in where there are certain elements that might sound good separately or individually, but combined together, they don't really work as cohesive. And so that being the case, like that is it's a very good attention to detail, and thematically it works very well. I'm a huge fan. If you would like to send me your SoundCloud link, if you could just link it at the bottom. Actually, no, we already have it. I take that back. I'm gonna go through your stuff. On a very separate note, guys, I do represent Feral Artist Agency as a booking agent, and we're constantly looking for talent. So there is there is a vested interest in you guys showcasing your content, because if the numbers and the quality that you guys produce and you guys put out here, like you pretty much have a talent agency here on board that could very well take attention in the things that you introduce. And so keep up the good work. Super psyched.
Yeah, I think Cryo works for Cymatics, because I remember him sending me presets that he made. They're actually really badass. I still use them, Cryo. Like, really bad, especially the metallic ones.
I'm hearing an echo, Jonathan.
Yeah, you know what? I'm hearing it too.
Yeah. If in the meantime, Martin, if you want to go ahead and I'm gonna totally ask you. I'm gonna send you a message about it later, Cryo. But I'm definitely interested in your work with Cymatics, because that's super awesome. Like it makes sense that you do professional sound design and sampling for a company like Cymatics. Like you can hear it in your music. So kudos. I'm a big fan. Martin, if you have any feedback.
Yeah, I do. I just have a question, because I'm not following this through the Twitch. I'm actually following it through Zoom, so I wasn't able to hear anything from Cryo when he was talking, if that was coming through. And then I was getting that feedback loop because I'm on Zoom and I'm on the other, so I got to cut down one of mine.
Right. So now I have my audio set up in where I'm hearing everything through Zoom, and I'll just sound check Twitch every now and then in order to just make sure that everything's working.
So the question I have is that if I'm talking through Zoom, is he going to be able to hear me?
Correct, because everything is being streamed through Twitch.
Fantastic. Okay, then my I don't know if he was able to see my video inside of my camera. But I was showing you the spectrometer that I have sitting on my board that I've got running through my system, so I can hear your music through it. And the only thing that I was picking up was obviously you're doing a cut in your lower frequency. You're cutting everything, it seems like, under 40 hertz out. There was only a couple of places where that was exceeding. So I felt like, and it may just be part of the genre, obviously. I'm more of a house producer as opposed to a dubstep producer. And on my end, it sounded fine. It was a little bit loud, maybe because of the way that we've got everything running. But it sounded solid, and that would be my only thing, was maybe some of the mid-frequency stuff, something in the neighborhood of about 2K to 4K felt a little soft, like it could have been a little bit crisper. But then that's personal taste, depending on, the track. I'd have to hear it compared to other things that you're mixing to see whether it was just specific to this song or whether it's something that you need to address as far as frequency. Because for me, at least from the experience that I've had with dubstep, bass is important, sub bass is important, but most of the bass is in that mid range. So I would say in the 150 to 300, and that just depends on what kind of growl you're going for. But in contrast, you also have to have a lot of stuff going on in that higher frequency, in the 2K to 4K range, to kind of make it sound bright. Otherwise, that mid-range low starts to take over. And in mixing, a lot of the times we call that mud. That's the muddy range. And obviously that's something that you probably want in this type of music, but without a good without the ability to be able to I guess counteract it with that higher frequency stuff, it starts to take over, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I tend to have mids in the range of the mid. What are you using for what kind of tool are you using for EQing your mids? I'm really curious on that one. Are you using like stock EQ isotope? Okay, I've heard really good things about it. I haven't messed with it. Cool.
I'm gonna check out his other track that he sent.
Yeah, let's do it. And guys, feel free to once again to submit your tracks. We're happy to review them. And fantastic feedback, Martin. Thank you for that. The EQ analyzer is incredibly helpful.
Am I still having a delay?
Let me hear.
Hello.
There's a delay no matter what because
there is a bit of delay
streaming, but that's okay. Like
okay, as long as it's not that bad. Cool. Let's check out what he got here.
It's dark at the bottom of the steps and the top so far, it's a mythical place. Mentally battered in this physical race. Shooting star and a crosshair guards my space. Distort that base. Twisted look upon my face. You say who if I set pace? Nobody else is involved in the race. Soundboy killer, pasta for dinner. Tweet, better tweet to my Twitter, Jack Sprackley's black. Course on my ripper, sweet MCs be bouncing like Tigger. Before you catch four, raw to the jaw, I'm raw with the war. I bring the war to your door. Start from the bottom, pump floor, but now I want more money, more doing it. Yeah, that's a reload. Who wants the war with a reload? I get reload, so many reloads. Everybody doing these stank like Debo. Yeah, that's a reload. Yeah, that's a reload. Doing it, yeah, that's a reload.
Bruh.
Doing these stank like Debo. Yeah, that's a reload. Underrun, I'm gonna get rolled on back and I'm better. My capitals letters try come before my quote like a colon now. Put a full stop to that, cock it back, spitfire from the track. Doubting and shouting all cause I went to the mountain, know where the profits at. I don't play no games, dangerous sport like chasing flames. Making a list and taking names. When I got drive, I've been changing lanes, Them man get put in brackets. Slow your roll, you typo. Wait, why you wanna act though? Doing it, yeah, that's a reload. What's the war with a reload? I get reload, so many reloads. Everybody doing these stank like Debo. Yeah, that's a reload. Yeah, that's a reload. Doing these stank like Debo. Yeah, that's a reload.
Sounded really dope.
Take it away, Jonathan.
I really like the sound design in this track. Especially like the distortion you added to the synths in the beginning. Let me see.
That's Sprackley's more money with a reload. I get him doing his reload. Doing it, yeah, that's a reload.
Yeah, it sounds really clean as fuck. Especially like, who's this rapper you added in there? Is he like, does he have like a following or just kind of just like one of your friends?
Look upon my fatally bad in this physical. It's dark at the bottom of the steps and the top star and the crosshair guards my pace. Nobody else is involved in the race. Soundboy killer doing it, yeah.
That's crazy, like how you can just like network on Twitch really well.
Right.
Just find random ass people.
It's a reload. Hold on back and I'm better on my capitals letters. Try come before my quote like a names. Man, I got
But yeah, I like the arrangement too. Like you kind of kept the energy going as opposed to just letting it die out, and it keeps has like a good flow to it.
I've been Apple, wait, why you
I don't really have much feedback mixing wise, but I just like the overall theme of it. It sounds pretty good.
Likewise. I forgot to begin recording, so I'm going to start recording. Okay, so we had Cryo just show out his track just a couple moments ago, and I'm a huge fan. One of the things that I'm noticing consistently about both this track and the track that you previously showed us, Cryo, is that you have, it sounds like you have a very established theme that pervades, or at least two of these tracks. I can't say your entire work. And once again, it's like this digital type of robotic crunch type of sound that really stands out, and it makes sense. If I were to hear both of these tracks back to back, it would make sense that they're coming from the same producer. And thematically, that helps immensely, because one of the hardest things for folks to get down is to understand how to create a sound that's theirs, right? A sound that's unique to them. And I think that the way that you're doing that it's done, it's executed very well. And not only is it executed very well, but it's evident that this is something that you seem to have found a certain level of, I would say, artistic appreciation for. And really, like the greatest part is that a lot of folks end up having tracks of their own that's unique to them, but they don't execute it as well as you do. And I think that that's largely due to the amount of time that you've been producing, right? And the amount of experience and the way that you've been building upon that. I am a huge fan of your drops. I very much like the gnarls. Like, for me, it's a little bit difficult to appreciate the high squeals of dubstep or sometimes of trap. And that's a bias, you know, that's my own personal bias. But I am a firm and huge fan of the way that you have these synths aligned for these growls. I wouldn't even call them growls. It's like right when you hear the drop, whatever that is, I'm a huge fan of it. So yeah, the weird sounds. And so I'm actually like, I really want to, once we're done with this, like I definitely want to sit down with you, and I want to take a look at more of your SoundCloud history and a little bit more of an idea of what type of objectives and what type of like projects you have in store for this particular brand for Cryo. Because I'd really like to see more of you, and I think more people should find out about you, if anything. Martin.
I'm going to stick to what I know, which is audio engineering. As far as, you know, not commenting on, I like the song. I definitely think it's got the same kind of feel as the previous one. So I do agree with you on that, Chris. That does feel like the same producer, which is sometimes hard for people, you know, to be able to consistently keep hitting the mark on whatever it is, but having the song sound different each time. On this one, I felt back to the EQ issue. I felt a very high frequency-ish. It felt almost a little bit distorted in the high frequency. There wasn't as much going on in the lows, and there was a big scoop missing from the mids until the vocalist came in. Once the vocalist came in, that started filling in that 500 to 1,000 range, which is 300 to 1,000 range, which is usually where the voice sits. So what I would recommend on this track, I know that there are already a lot of sounds going on in there, but maybe some kind of melody line that carries between the vocal pieces. So then that way that frequency range is filled, unless of course you're purposely leaving that gap there. So then that way when those frequencies come in, they feel more forceful, but then maybe leading that in with, you know, some kind of a riser or something. So then that way we go from zero sound to some, you know, we don't go from zero to, you know, all of his vocals in at the same time. It kind of goes into his vocals, so then that way they feel a little bit more like, you know, like they're being let in, I guess, as opposed to just boom, they're there.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that like that's an incredibly good observation, Martin. And the audibly speaking, you can tell that there's a very clear distinction from where the vocals are and where the drop occurs, and there's no muddiness. There's no I didn't catch any distortion or any difficulty in being able to determine on an audio range when the audio start?
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt. It doesn't happen all the time. Like it was more towards the end of this song, or maybe another thing that happens a lot of times is people, as they start adding sounds for the climax, they start losing track of where their volume is, because each one of those sounds adds a little bit to the volume. And by the end of it, you've lost control of your volume and you're bordering, because I know a lot of this particular kind of sound is having some grunginess to it, which there is wanted distortion, but what I was hearing was not wanted distortion. It just didn't feel that way. At least not the whole time. It was towards the end as it was building up, when you had all this, like the peak of the sound. No, actually, it's part of my board. So here. So this is the digital board that I'm using right now. I'm running a flat EQ on it. So then that way I'm, obviously not adding anything to it. I'm trying to listen to it as flat as possible from the feed. Obviously, there may be some crunching on the feed, right? Sometimes a lot of these things will, send it to ACC files or convert the audio into MP3, which then crunches it a little bit. Thank you, appreciate it. And so that may be something. I'm not sure. We'll have to listen to more music. But yep, that's where the spectral analyzer is coming from, is from the board. And I've worked on this board a lot, so I'm pretty familiar with reading that thing and being able to get good information from it. And if you don't have a spectral analyzer, I don't know, what are you using as far as your DAW?
Yeah, that's fine, man. I mean, other people aren't sending other stuff.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome to. We are most inclusive. We're about halfway through our webinar here with you guys, and so these will be a monthly thing that we'll be doing. Oh, you're on 20. I'm still on 19. All right, mine 20.
Okay.
I don't think there's a 19. I think it just jumped from 12 to 20.
I'm on 12. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Dude, do you know what hybrid trap is?
Okay.
Chris.
Yo, you're asking me? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know how Trill threw a show for hybrid trap?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he has a couple tracks on that label.
Through Trovo?
Oh, it's not through Trovo. I was just making that connection, but he actually has a couple tracks on there. He actually introduced me to hybrid trap.
Hybrid trap, not the genre.
Not the genre, the actual label. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Very good stuff. Are you touring at all, Cryo? Because you have the production for it. Maybe it's like.
I'm trying to find this track.
Okay. Yeah, Nazar has a couple stuff on there too. That makes sense.
Do you know Nazar?
Small world. Yeah, I do. He's a good dude. Farham. We had lunch with him when he came into town. Dude, super humble guy. He's so smart, and he's so incredibly like. You're not okay. Well, that's something that we could look into. I think that once again you do have the production for it. I haven't taken a look too much at your branding. I think that might be something that we can look into. That's something else that we could offer, guys, is that not only do we do track reviews, but I'm also happy to give you guys a booking agent's perspective on introducing a Facebook profile and a social media account and how that's perceived from a talent buyer's perspective. Because ultimately, like, if the goal is for you to be playing or touring, you need to present your product in a way that not only sounds good, but that that the talent buyers can look at in a way that they can see that there is value and that ultimately will bring in heads through the door, because that's what they're about, right? Like, you could be the best artist in the world, but if you don't have a brand that represents value, that represents that people are following you, then no one's going to want to pay to see you. And that's the unfortunate thing, is that, you could have some folks with very, very, not a crazy amount of talent, but that have a crazy amount of viewing and a whole lot of followers, and then they'll pay big money for that. An example is like something like Pauly D, right? From what is it, that TV show? Pauly
he's
D
a DJ.
he doesn't produce anything, he doesn't create anything of his own, but he's DJing and he's known and he has a reputation for his his TV persona. Shaq is another guy. It's like who would ever hear an original track by Shaq? Nobody, because he doesn't have one. But he is a known persona, and people know that they would pay to see Shaq.
Didn't he make a track with Nightmare though?
Yeah. I'm sure he made it.
You think he?
I'm sure he made it. Like Paris Hilton made tracks too. I'm sure. Like, not to discredit that, but like the world of EDM does incorporate, and it's a functional piece of it is ghostwriting. Like I wouldn't even say that Shaq would be the only one that does ghostwriting, but this is a widespread use in our community. Carnage actively uses ghostwriters. They have a lot of them on his brand. And so, it's at the end of the day, it is a business, and a lot of folks they approach this from an artistic perspective, which makes sense as a creator. But if you want to succeed, you need to look at it from the perspective of a business, and that's ultimately what will determine who actually makes it and who doesn't. It's not raw skill and talent alone.
Yeah, but it's still kind of disappointing though, because it's like you kind of feel like you're being lied to. It's like not genuine.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the beauty of marketing, is that like marketing is to create a perception of things. Whether they're true or not is irrelevant. It's like, who's to say that actually wearing Axe body spray will have women come and tackle you down the street? But we buy into the fantasy, we buy into the make believe, and so that's the beauty of marketing. And so, for better or for worse, like those that are well versed in marketing and that understand what to look for will have a substantially better time and a much easier approach at being able to succeed in this industry. End of rant. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So very cool stuff. Cryo, if you have any other stuff to share with us, or any other users that we have here in the chat room, you guys are more than welcome to submit your tracks. We'd love to hear them. We'll have Martin also do his magic with his board and do some EQ spectrum analyzing for you guys. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Cryo. Like the music industry is it's an entertainment industry, and it's no different than Hollywood. Like a lot of those artists a lot of the actors that we see in like movies like The Avengers, they actually look really silly in front of a green screen when they're acting. But after all the bells and whistles and CGI and FX, like, it creates a very different image and a very different perception of what we're actually watching. So very cool stuff. If we'd like, if we don't have anybody else that wants to submit track reviews, if it's okay with you guys, we can go into what it takes in order to properly market. And what looks like what would actually appear to be a very solid SoundCloud page. SoundCloud is used to a certain extent, but what they really look for as far as booking agents or talent buyers are concerned is they look a lot at Spotify plays. And there are certain services that allow you to determine, I think if you have a SoundCloud Pro account, you can determine where your music is being played from. And based off of that, you can present that information to the promoter in that city. When we had Evie, she's an international artist from the Netherlands, sweet girl, super awesome girl. She came by into Houston, and she has like a couple of million, listeners, right? She makes lo-fi. It's not an incredibly giant genre, but for the amount of listeners that she has, she's pretty well known in that community. And she had 90,000. The second biggest city for her was Houston, and she had 90,000 followers. 90,000 listeners just in Houston alone. And so that kind of information is important, because if you're approaching a talent buyer who doesn't know anything about lo-fi, who doesn't know anything about, doesn't know anything about the artist, but if you give them tangible numbers and say, hey, it doesn't matter whether or not you know this person or not, we can bring in money to you. We can bring heads in your door because people are actively in your city listening to this person. That's a very, very stimulating conversation for them, because then you're speaking to their interests.
Yeah, but how do you throw like a lo-fi show though? Because I don't think I've ever been to a lo-fi show.
So I threw one last week, and honestly, like it's no different than throwing any other kind of show. It's the type of marketing, like the marketing that I did for it, I'll admit wasn't as effective, and it wasn't as good as it could have been. But if we're talking about perception, right? Quality flyer, quality artist, and you need a quality venue. And between those 3 days, in addition to like, let's say a good budget price for the artist and a good budget price for the price in the door, you can end up with a pretty relatively successful show that way. And so, you know, like the way that you throw a lo-fi show would be no different than throwing, let's say, a dubstep show as far as organization is concerned. There are certain elements that a dubstep artist would care about, you know, and it maybe they care more about having a lot of lighting and really, really big speakers. Not to say that a lo-fi artist wouldn't, but maybe for a lo-fi artist, it might be more effective to have a lounge type of environment.
Yeah, because I could see a lot more people connecting as opposed to just like going to a show where it's like super loud and you can like barely talk to people.
Yes, yes. And lo-fi, I mean, ultimately, like the music is still going to be played at the same volume, but energetically, people would interact with themselves differently. A trap show is going to be different than a house show, you know? And so it's like making sure that you have an understanding of the market and the people that are attending your show is key. And so that's the shoes that we want to put ourselves in when we're booking our artists. Hey, you know, are we properly having a conversation with the right promoter that understands this market, right? I'm not going to approach a dubstep a dubstep talent buyer or a dubstep promoter with an EV show, like with a lo-fi show, because they don't have a market for it. They don't understand the audience behind it. That's why I threw the show myself. Like it was easier for me to tap into a market like this because I have more friends that are involved in lo-fi than I have friends that are, you know, I have a lot of friends that love dubstep, because who doesn't love dubstep? But there was a common element there. And then we also brought a local that by the name of Break Check. Shout out to Jacob Fleming. Who did a killer job, and he brought a lot of folks from his community that were interested in, it's called the funk type of music genre. And funk, to give you guys an idea, not funk, it's PHONK. Funk is kind of like hip hop with, it's like hip hop with some trap elements, if you will. It's like with harder 808s, right? And it's a little bit more down tempo, you know, it's a little bit slower, but it made for a really, really good time because it's like it worked very cohesively with the music that he was playing, and then to get an artist after that.
So with that lo-fi show, did you also include other genres?
Well, I did. Well, so we had funk as a genre, we had lo-fi as a genre, and then I played a lot of dem tempo stuff. I couldn't find somebody else to fill the first starting slot, so I took the reign, and I played lo-fi. I played some lo-fi. I played a little bit of like some funky, like charismatic stuff, but just trying to keep the energy level down, because you don't ever want to go harder than the headliner. Yeah, funk is definitely strange. Jonathan, you left your mic on. I don't think he has his headphones on, but it's pretty cool stuff. Like it was a pretty good show, and honestly, like I have an eye on another venue that would do really good for lo-fi, really good for lo-fi. So we'll see what comes of it. But yeah, so I'm happy to take guys' suggestions of, you know, there's a couple folks that are coming in here. Once again, you guys are free to submit your tracks for us for review. If you have questions about the industry or questions about, you know, not only just production, but about whether it be branding or so forth, we're happy to answer them, or I'm happy to answer them in any way that
do you think what's the most important platform to have the most followers on? Like should it be Instagram, Facebook, or SoundCloud?
A combination of, really the best answer is all, because all of these platforms will be looked at. So if I'm, you know, from the perspective of somebody that's looking into talent buying, right? So just to clarify, you have a manager, and the manager's responsibility is to develop the networking circle, the brand, and the development of the artist. That's what a manager does. Sometimes a manager can also act as their booking agent. And a booking agent, their specific responsibility is to make sure that we can get gigs for the artist. Sometimes a manager will work with an agency, a talent agency, to do the booking for them, right? The reason that I'm giving you guys this, you know, this basic understanding of how the structure works is that for booking agents, as far as booking agents are concerned, booking agents are then having conversations with talent buyers. Talent buyers can be the promoters at the local club. You know, and the promoters are responsible for letting people know, hey, there's a show coming up, and promoting it, right? So sometimes the promoters themselves will act as talent buyers. Sometimes they'll go through a certain separate agency in order to do the talent buying. The point is that a talent agent, or somebody acting as a talent agent, and then a talent agent and then a talent buyer, they will both sit down together and say, hey, I have something that you might be interested in. And they could be the booking agents, the booking agent telling the talent buyer about an artist, or it could be the talent buyer telling the booking agent about a venue, right? Because they're selling each other. they both have something that the other one wants. One's a venue, and the other one is a. I'm hearing an echo, by the way.
Yeah, I'm hearing it too. I don't know where it's coming from. It just kind of happened out of nowhere.
Mic check.
Yeah, no, it's me.
I don't know what caused it.
No, it's me.
Okay, thanks. And so once again, one has a venue to provide and the other one has talent to buy. When they're having this conversation, the talent, the person representing the agent will be looking at the venue and saying, okay, is this a good venue? Does this have a good reputation? Does this work with the artist that I'm representing, right? Because if the venue is too dingy or if it's of a lower tier than the artist is, it would be of detriment for that artist to play there. Separately, the talent buyer is looking for somebody that is on the tier of that would be a suitable candidate, right? So for example, something like Stereo Live, they may not necessarily want to book a lower tier artist, right? Stereo Live is a local club here, or for that matter, like Virtuosos through Ava, right? They're looking to buy talent at a very specific price range, or at a very specific type of following. And so it's very much like dating. Like there's a certain level of compatibility that needs to exist. And if that compatibility is there, then business can occur. So in order to determine how business can occur and whether or not compatibility is there, they look at numbers. To finally answer your question, right? Because you need to understand the psychology behind it. To finally answer your question, they look at social media following in all capacities. Facebook, if I have 30,000 followers, but I only get 2 likes per post, that might cause some level of questioning. Did I buy these followers? Was I active and then all of a sudden not active? There's a lot of things that people really don't consider the long-term repercussions when it comes to buying followers, and that's one of them. And then ultimately you can actually go onto the accounts themselves and probably find out that they're fake, and so one of the things that ultimately wins more than anything else is organically cultivating and creating content and creating, cultivating an audience. So that's anything from engagement. On Instagram, are you constantly posting, and are you posting, like, that's why memes right now, they're in. Like if you're posting quality memes and supplementing that with a soundtrack release or a track release or a remix or some type of collaboration, if you're tagging, for example, in Cairo's example, if he tagged the guy that he worked with on an Instagram post and said, yo guys, we have this new track coming out, and he's announcing it, let's say several weeks before it comes out, you can build up hype. And then all of a sudden the social algorithms will then start learning, hey, your friends are going to see this, my friends are going to see this, and then you're cross-pollinating each other's social media friend lists, right, or followers. So getting bombed by other artists. I think as an example, if Cryo, if you're more familiar with Twitch than I am, right, I think that another example is like rating, right? I think that's the term, Jonathan.
Oh yeah, on Twitch.
Right. So rating is a way of cross-pollination, a way of being able to grab a market from one audience and bring it into the market of another one. And that's very much based once again on compatibility. It's like if I'm hosting a Twitch channel on cooking, I'm not going to want to rate a gaming channel. They're completely separate. But if they're both artists and they're both, if as far as social media accounts are concerned, whether it be Twitch or Instagram or Facebook, if both accounts are tailored for a very specific type of audience that likes a very specific type of genre of music per se, then it would be very easy to mesh the two and to get followers, and it becomes a win-win for everybody involved. So those are some strategies that you can do in order to increase your algorithm and to increase your reach. Quality and consistent posts help substantially. A low resolution picture, nobody wants to look at that. It's like if you take a picture of your food and the plate could have been delicious, but it doesn't look that appetizing, people don't like that. It's like there has to be an attention for detail. And ultimately, like, the goal of the artist is to be as much time in the studio and less time on their phone, the less time thinking about business or where they're going to be booking. And so one of the things that a lot of artists don't realize, or they probably do realize now that I'm talking about this, is that you need a team. You need a team to handle your social media, a team to handle your branding, a team to handle your booking, the logistics, brand development. Like, all of these things are necessary because it is a business, and you can only run a business by yourself for so long. So from follower count to interaction, there are specific analytics that let you know how many times in Spotify, for example, you go on any Spotify account, you can tell how many listens or how many plays they get per month. That's huge. That's huge.
And it also shows you where people are listening to your music.
Correct.
I don't know if SoundCloud does that. I think it might be like a feature that you have to buy.
I believe so. I believe that that's the case as well.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct. There are separate services that'll also allow you to do that. I can't really mention them at the top of my head right now, but there is a lot of data that exists that ultimately is accessible, and it can be analyzed, it can be cross-checked, and sooner or later you're going to find out whether an account is bogus, right? There is a really cool thing, however, in where all of a sudden you'll find a brand new account, right? That's like new within a couple months or within a year, right? And it has this incredible production, and their branding is intact, like everything is super tight, and they only have like a couple hundred plays. And so accounts like that normally catch people's attention, because at that point, because everything is so perfect, it leads you to believe that it could be just a separate alias for an artist. It could have been a ghost producer that finally, like, their contract came out, and so their contract finally ended, and so now they're actually pursuing a career in it. But like generally, like when you see something like that, like for us as talent agents, because we're constantly scouting, for us that's a lot of like that's kind of like a gold nugget, right? It's like it makes us very excited, because it's like, okay, this person knows what it takes, and ultimately that's what's needed in order to sell you. You could have the best tracks on earth, and once again, if your social media doesn't prove it, if the way that you're packaging that material, if it doesn't shine, if it doesn't have that polish, then it's very hard to sell you. As much as we believe in you, it's very hard to sell you. And so there is a developmental side of being able to get to a point in where you're actually ready for touring. It's more than just production. It's more of just saying, oh yeah, my schedule's available. It is a business aspect that needs to be looked at.
Yeah, I like what you said about like how memes are in, because memes is kind of like a way to advertise, but not, it's like so hidden, because like it just seems like you're trying to be funny, but like low key you're like, oh yeah, like my new track's coming out, and you just try to, I don't know, like make some SpongeBob meme about it. And,
yeah, and
yeah, it's like more clever, and like because you have to actually put a thought into it, as opposed to just say, oh hey, like this is gonna be my new track.
a really cool thing is that like also writing waves is popular. You know, it's like if there's a meme that just came out, like who did it? I think Atlians did something like this. Everybody was talking about the meme about, you know, raiding Area 51, and Atlians put out a track. Wasn't sure if maybe they just released it early or if it was just a coincidental. Their marketing is too good for it to be accidental, but they did an illusion, or they kind of like they mentioned or referenced, you know, hey, you know, for those of you, you know, storming Area 51, like here's the track for you. And it was a track that had something to do with like secrecy and like agency and like, and so meme track, exactly. And so it's like you can embed culture in your tracks that way, right? You can make references. You everybody and their mother has heard the Lion King intro in a bunch of sets, right? Does that completely totally violate copyright? Absolutely. But like at the end of the day, like you might end up catching a whole lot of traction by the time that SoundCloud catches wind of it and takes it off. You know, I'm not encouraging copyright infringement. I'm simply saying that by you having an awareness of what's culturally popular at the moment, it allows people that don't know about you find out about you and relate to you, right? That simply put, like if I have no interest in trap whatsoever and I know the Lion King, if I hear the Lion King, I'm going to sit around for a little bit. I'm going to hear out what that track has to say, and I just might like it. But if I know it's trap ahead of time and I know nothing about trap, that's too risky for me to explore. So I might just not click on it. So working off of like being culturally aware of what's happening around you and writing waves, like as soon as a track comes out that like everybody is blowing up about, like that like the I mean, we hear it all the time, like that's how like remix competitions come out. We've all heard 1,000,001 different remixes of the sicko mode. Like catch waves, guys. If you catch these waves, it makes it easier for you to get discovered if you have the production to prove it. And that's something that can we actually, you know, if we're going to use a case study, can we go into Cryo's profile? I'm actually really curious to see if you have.
He took down all of his tracks though, but I think
bro, that's fire, bro. That's fire, Cryo. Yeah, and like he did he did the remix for Peekaboo and he played it out and reposted it. That's huge. That's so freaking huge. So see things like that. It's like if you're playing the wave and you just happen to get the right sound and the right at the right time, then that makes all the difference. Go right back for me. So one of the things that I'm going to make a very positive observation. One of the things that I really like is you have all your social media links on the right-hand side, and that's very useful. It makes it easy for people to follow you on Spotify, Instagram, Twitter. Snapchat, like you have all your social media profiles linked there. That actually helps for two reasons, not only on the logical side that like artists will be able to follow you, or excuse me, fans will be able to follow you as well as artists, but it also helps the SEO, search engine optimization. It makes you more popular and more relevant in search for search engine purposes, right? It's like a game of associations. If Bob is the coolest guy in town and I know Bob, then by association I might be cool too. Websites and platforms work in a very similar way. If you have they're called backlinks. If you have backlinks embedded on your profiles, on your websites, it makes you more relevant, thereby more popular. And as a consequence, it makes you easier to find. So just a small point of observation. I would, it would definitely help to have some tracks up there. I know that a lot of the tracks that you've been releasing seems to be going through other labels. Exactly. Yeah, you just literally took the words out of my mouth. They were done by labels. And so there's pros and cons about doing self-releases. Pros is that you have access to the royalties. The cons is that if you're self-releasing on yourself, you're depending upon your own distribution platform, whatever that distribution platform is, in order to release it. So you could have something sophisticated, like you are working with, let's say, Hybrid Chap, and they say, hey, we'll allow you to self-release and we'll promote it, and you just pay us X amount of money. Or we'll release it and retain all the rights and royalties to it, but then, hey, you get access to an audience that you simply don't have. You can go through smaller, communities like White Noise Collective, plug. You could, there's just so many different ways that you can approach this, and it very much depends on your business, and it depends on where you are in your brand. So for something like Atlians, as an example, everybody already knows who Atlians is. They may not necessarily have to depend on them releasing through a label or a distribution network, right? They can release on themselves because they already have so many followers. But once again, it comes into the question of, what type of agreements did they make in their contract? Can they self-release? Because there are specific contracts that say, hey, if you're going to be releasing through this label or through this distribution channel, you have to release the next X amount of tracks. And not until you've done that can you actually do any releases on your own.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea also to have like your music in multiple platforms, because I think it's really good that you have them like also on Spotify, because SoundCloud almost shit the fan at one point. I think it was like a year or two ago, where supposedly it was gonna come down.
Yeah.
And so you just never know, like one day all your music can be gone and like all your followers. So it's not a bad idea to just have like multiple platforms to have your music in.
Absolutely. On that note, you could use services like DistroKid, CD Baby. I'm not too familiar with TuneCore, but I know it does something similar. Like you could use platforms that allow you to distribute your music through a variety of different digital markets, like Amazon Music or Apple or iTunes. But then you can also simultaneously release through. Just really by one click of the button, it'll do it all for you, right? Instead of you having to go individually every single account, type in all the information, and then do it one by one by one.
Amuse is a free one that I found recently, and it even has an app, so you just upload stuff on there, and it'll do it automatically. It'll even put it on Spotify.
Very cool. And Spotify actually is actually a preferred thing for talent agents and talent buyers. Because of Spotify's waning interest. I still use SoundCloud. I love SoundCloud. A lot of folks, they swear against it or they swear by it. But the point is that a lot of folks are prioritizing Spotify data versus SoundCloud data because it's easier. SoundCloud is a little bit easier to fool. Spotify is a little bit harder. And so because of that, Spotify, I would say is definitely one of the recommendations that I can make as far as having your music uploaded on there, because once again, you do get some very tangible hard metrics that will definitely help people understand whether or not you're worth the asking price that you're being sought out for. I'm not gonna spend $1,000 on an artist if Green Room. I'm not gonna spend $1,000 on an artist if that person doesn't even have 1,000 followers. Much less 1,000 followers in my city. It's like it's a game of numbers, guys, and that's ultimately what promoters are looking for.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool things about SoundCloud. I've noticed that so if a big artist likes a smaller artist's song, let's say you listen to the big artist's song, the smaller artist's song will play right after. Instead of it keeps playing their music in Spotify, it'll play whatever they like, and I think that's really helps a lot with finding new talent. On SoundCloud is where I find like most like underground producers, I've noticed.
Same.
Also, I like that like you can download stuff from SoundCloud directly. If you're a DJ and you want like the wave, you can get it from there, and like you can put like gates and stuff, which is like really useful.
Explain sound gates for us, just in case that we're not 100% familiar.
So
with
sound gates, it's pretty much this right here, like this little button. So you just click it, and it basically tells you to, hey, if you want this free download, you can just write a comment, follow me on YouTube, on Instagram, or whatever, and you get the free download. So I'd say it's a pretty good trade.
Yeah, it's a good way of being able to kind of force your listeners to follow you. Sometimes, like I'm even guilty of this. I'll be, downloading a bunch of music, and I won't like them. Not because I don't like them. It's just like I'm not focused on specifically liking them. I just want to get those tracks because I'm preparing for a set. And sound gates are a helpful way of making sure that if somebody is taking the time to download your music because they clearly like it, that you are getting the algorithm data. I mean, that you are getting the following count that you deserve for that. And so that's when it's very, very powerful for you to do self-releases. You could do your own sound gates. You don't have to rely on a label or on a distribution network to do it. If a distribution network does it, then sometimes it becomes a little bit more annoying because then all of a sudden you have to like not only the artist, but then the distribution label itself. And that's a lot of clicking. And sometimes that gets a little bit annoying when you're downloading music, but it's the price to pay for getting something for free. So it's hard to complain. We are approaching the last couple of minutes, guys. Any last questions, any last thoughts, comments, or feedback about this session? We're definitely more than happy to hear, as this is something that we are definitely wanting to continue doing for you guys and ultimately creating a little bit more of a community towards. We will be doing this once a month at the beginning of every month. Every Thursday of the month, we will be doing these community reviews. This particular review, given the amount of folks that we had in, and we're incredibly appreciated for having Cryo and a couple of other spectators here in this room, we definitely want to grow in time. And so with that said, we will be doing this every month. Next week, we have a workshop through Pantheon Music Academy where we'll have a featured guest. The week after that, we'll have a showcasing for DJs through the Green Room. And the week after that, we'll also be doing another workshop through Pantheon. Check out Vortex. Check out Vortex. I could still use some of his pins even though it's older. Cool.
Let's check it out.
Yeah, I'll definitely follow up with you. Love the advice and branding of whatnot. Definitely needed. Happy to help. Happy to help. Let's check out this last track and then we'll close. We'll close for the evening.
That fly's still there. Hey, Cryo doesn't disappoint.
This release is there. I think I got my one pause in front of me that's here. Really cool, and it shows. It actually, I think that oh, can you pause the music? I think that with this particular track, and this will be the last thing that, unfortunately, that we'll be able to say for the evening because we do have to close up. It sounds very similar to Nasty, and Nasty took off just approximately about a year's time ago. And so catching on a very specific type of theme, once again, there's a difference between emulation and recreation. And so being able to find a similar kind of happy medium and where you're taking something that's really popular and really, really like taking off and give it your own spin is incredibly, like, it's incredibly helpful for your brand. So good stuff, Cryo. Super, super excited. We're now friends on Facebook, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with this, because I think that I'm super stoked. I'm really, really curious to see what direction you're gonna go in. So we'll talk a little bit more. Guys, thank you guys so much for joining. My name is Chris. Jonathan, Martin, if you'd like to introduce yourselves, and we'll close for the evening.
Jonathan, you go first.
Oh, hey, Nessa. We are going to be doing these every month at the beginning of every month. Feel free to join us and to follow us at Pantheon Music Academy. We have a bunch of really awesome stuff for you every week. Every Thursday, we will be here live, providing you free content for you guys.
Yeah, we're going to be doing DJ lessons. We're doing some workshops with some artists, and they'll be showing their tracks. What else are we doing?
That's definitely the way that that's the model that we're following. And so every artist will be different. Every DJ we have will be different. Every track that we review will be different. And so the model is very consistent. What's different is, of course, the feedback that we get and the folks that show up as a consequence of what they have to offer. So super happy to have you guys. And we look forward to catching you guys next week for a workshop.
Alrighty. Is that it?
Yep, that's it. Let's cut her short. Have
Sounds
a good night,
good.
everyone.
See you.